So over the years, we've seen so many different types of Warthogs from each Halo, and if we want to take a look even closer, we may have even noticed that the tires have also changed along the years as well. So of course that means we have to look at every single tire and pick which is the best and the worst and see how they've changed over the years. And before you guys say, hey, look, y'all are running out of ideas. No, we have at least like one other idea in the works as well. So you can't say that. We're just really passionate about tires in Halo. So for us to make the decisions as to which are really the best and the top tier tires from all of the Warthogs in every Halo game, we of course had to assemble a team of Warthog tire aficionados. It was just Luke, Dim, and I, to really take a close look at how these tires have evolved and changed over the years. But real quick, before we fully dive into the lore and the expectations that we have when it comes to Halo tires, we just wanted to give a quick moment to plug our podcast that we have. It's called the Rocket Boys Podcast. A lot of you guys have already checked it out already, but if you want some content from Luke and I just talking about stuff with Halo, we have some really awesome guests on there who are from the Halo community. But maybe give it a shot if you guys want to have something to listen to in the background while you're playing games or something. It'd mean a lot to us and it'd be really cool. And okay, let's get into this. So to start things off, we have to look at Halo Combat Evolved, the game that started off the Halo universe and introduced us to the first ever set of Warthog tires. And you may notice that these tires are a pretty standard design, opting for a typical off-road approach for them. You may notice that the grooves between the tread blocks are wider. Also, these tires have a really interesting, I guess, hubcap design to them, which is something I didn't even really notice in Halo. But yeah, there's this little panel on the tires that would likely be there to prevent the accumulation of moisture and dirt on a vehicle like this that typically goes off-road. You also may notice that those tread blocks do have an interlocking pattern, which is something that does change up periodically throughout the Halo Warthogs. So it's worth taking note as to what it looked like when it all started and how it changes throughout Halo. For instance, when we get to Halo 2, in general, we saw a lot more detail to how the tires look. There was some recoloration to the tires to make it look like it had more wear, and now the treads were kind of separated into a 3-section block approach, different from what we had in Combat Evolved. While still obviously used for kind of an all-purpose off-roading type vehicle, it does have a little bit of a lower profile in its pattern, which could allow for better handling and speed in the real world, but nonetheless it is different as the outer tread blocks do raise outwards and go into the shoulder of the tire, which is kind of unique here. But by the time Halo 3 came out, the ante was raised. There was a lot more detail put in here with just the way that they handled the tread, the wear, and the dirt here. Now, similar to the Halo 2 design, the Halo 3 Warthog does keep a lot of the same things from Halo 2, but it always seemed like they took this extra level of attention into making the Warthog tires look like they were these vehicles that were often used and often in these off-roading type expeditions and not these perfectly pristine vehicles never driven before. I mean, maybe they took things a little bit too far where in some points it does kind of look like the tire might be in the early stages of seeing some serious tire rot. I don't know, it just looks like some of those treads maybe have seen some nicer days, but I kind of like that about Halo 3. It doesn't seem like they're these brand new tires that were just thrown on like we see in some of the other Halo games, so it does have its unique charm to it, which is quite different than what we see a little bit later on. Oh, and it was our first introduction to the Puma Easter egg on these tires, which is really great. Now, it could just be me, but for whatever reason, I feel like the ODST tires seem slightly different than the Halo 3 tires. Now, it could just be my imagination or the aesthetic of ODST playing into how these tires look, since these games are kind of made out of the same engine. But in ODST, it does seem like maybe the coloration or the general wear and tear on these tires may be reduced just slightly for ODST. It could be identical, it just seems a little less aggressive than what I see whenever we're playing through Halo 3. So with Halo Reach, though, it seems like Bungie took on a very different approach with the Warthog design here as well. While it does seem to have much cleaner tires and less of the worn out and maybe even rotting tires that Halo 3 has, Halo Reach has this very clean black matte finish on these tires that does make it look very rubbery. Now, the reason I'm pointing out that it has this matte color to it is because later on it changes significantly, but you may notice the way that these tires are, they're not very reflective or shiny, which is something that comes up in other Halo games down the road. But for the most part, Reach has a very simple and clean design. However, they did add a little bit more detail to some of the treads, adding in a little bit more of pronounced ribs. And for a send-off, I think that the Halo Reach Warthog does look pretty good. Now, after this point, 343 Industries took over Halo, and we do see some pretty massive changes to the tire designs in Halo, though I will be fair, some of these changes actually looked really good, and then some of them did miss the mark pretty badly as well. So it is interesting to see how 343 sometimes just did a fantastic job, other times kind of not so much. Combat Evolved Anniversary is actually an example of when it looked really well, in our opinion. We do feel like they changed it up quite significantly from Combat Evolved, though it seems to have more pronounced detail in the tire design with a more unique interlocking pattern, making the tire stand out more than having a generic look that was featured in all the other Halo games. And the hubcaps actually look more like these plates rather than a part of the tire, which is something we liked because it just makes it seem like there's more detail and more things going on. And with Halo 4 being 343's first main entry in the Halo franchise, they did an okay job with the tires. They are kind of small and seem to lack a lot of the detail we like. And for whatever reason, when we watch the Warthog drive, it sometimes feels or seems like the tires are more just floating on the ground rather than actually driving in the ground for whatever reason. So it's definitely not one of our favorite tires here. They almost seem a little bit toy-like compared to what we had just a little bit ago with what 343 did in Combat Evolved Anniversary. And to follow it up, Halo 2 Anniversary would release, and it's kind of like one of those instances where you take your car to a car wash and you look at what options you have, and there's like 30 different variations of a car wash that you're supposed to choose from or order at the car wash place. You don't know which one to pick, so you pick the one that focuses on the tires. But it does seem like no matter what Warthog you're jumping in, no matter what the situation is, the tires are incredibly clean and detailed and shiny almost, or reflective. I mean, they just glisten out in the sunlight. We were introduced with a ton of different types of tires actually, because first we have Halo 2 Anniversary Multiplayer, which has a lot of these black, shiny, plasticky, reflective tires, much like what we had in Halo 4, and it kind of almost looks like racing tires, but with these larger tread blocks kind of extruding from the tire at times. Whereas in Halo 2 Anniversary's campaign, they did a completely different approach here. Matter of fact, Halo 2 Anniversary campaign looks really good. Similar to what we had in Combat Evolved Anniversary, we see that alternate tread on the tires that was in CEA, and actually it does seem to have a decent amount of coloration and wear and tear on it, where it still looks like a clean, refreshed and remodeled version of the Warthog, but it still kind of stays true to that feeling of grittiness and the fact that this vehicle does go off-roading and drives through various terrains, and we really like that. Though back on the multiplayer side of things, we have the Golden Warthog finally available, and honestly, there's so much hype about this vehicle, you can never get too upset. One of the biggest notable changes though definitely are the rims on that Warthog, as we don't have any plates covering them and they just look so clean, and we really like that one too. Halo 5 Guardians kind of leaned a little bit more into what we saw with Halo 4's tires as well, though surprisingly some small adjustments did make these tires stand out significantly better than what we had with Halo 4. For instance, it seemed like the tires were a little bit bigger, and despite the fact that they looked different, they seemed more practical for the Warthog. And even though it's just a slight increase if there was a massive change here, as it did pay off in at least making the Warthog not look like a toy and actually look like a vehicle. And then lastly, with Halo Infinite, the Warthog here is really hard to really gauge because we haven't gotten to jump on and actually play Infinite yet. We only have that footage we saw last year. We saw a little bit of the Warthog driving, and while it does seem a little bit shinier at times in these tires, much like Halo 2 Anniversaries, we are optimistic here because first of all, we see the Chief driving through puddles and stuff, and maybe this might be the first game that has some sort of environmental impact on some of the tires. We kind of want to believe this because if you look very closely, there's a brief moment after Master Chief drives that Warthog in the reveal where the Warthog gets a little bit of damage and he shortly later jumps out of the Warthog, but when he is straightening out the tires, you actually may notice he may have actually lost a tire completely and is still driving the Warthog. We don't have any 100% confirmation, but we're really optimistic at the very least that perhaps these tires are going to be much more environmentally impacted by the gameplay, which would be so amazing to see all of these years later. So overall, we had to look at the Warthog tires and pick the best, the worst, and maybe something else, we would probably go ahead and sit on our favorite tires, being maybe the Halo 3 ODST tires, if they're actually different from the Halo 3 tires. I don't know, there's something special about those tires, I just can't figure out what it is. And our least favorite, surprisingly, going to Halo 2 Anniversary Multiplayer. We honestly thought it would maybe be Halo 4 when we started this video, but comparatively, Halo 4 is not nearly as egregious as Halo 2 Anniversary Multiplayer. Though interestingly enough, Halo 2 Anniversary Campaign maybe has our favorite tire of the newer Halo games that have released more recently. And then of course we are optimistic to see what they end up doing with Halo Infinite, but hopefully the tires don't always look super shiny and infinite like they did in the trailer, and hopefully it's actually a result of those puddle splashes we saw, because that'd be really cool. What's your opinion when it comes down to tires in Halo Warthogs? We all know the tires are obviously the most important thing that has ever been needed in all of Halo, and the design that goes into them are obviously what makes or breaks a Halo game, right? But we do like to know what you guys think. Also, if you like this video, make sure you guys are subscribed here, and you can also subscribe to our second channel. We've been uploading some short form content, some rapid fire storytelling, so if you want to just cruise through and get a ton of information in a really short amount of time, please do subscribe to Rocket Sloth 2. There's a link down below for that. But otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.